Hello everyone, and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire, and welcome back to another episode of Look Out and Shout. And today we're back on a TransArt train, the Beast Wars train, because today we are reviewing TransArt BWM-02 Skateboard Gorilla, their version of a Transmetal 1 Optimus Primal. And that is a lovely design box with what I particularly like on the back of the box is some nice little Axelon computer bay, computer console, and almost CR chamber looking designs on the back. We've seen these before, but I do like the little decor laid out with Primal himself in a blueprint form and some nice artwork for the front. So yeah, this is again one of the older releases from TransArt. I was a bit hesitant to pick this up because from looking at the images, I felt this was more or less the original toy, just re-released and slightly upscaled. And I did feel the same about the Transmetal Cheetor, which I think came out before this or just after. Again, one of the earlier releases, but I've got that coming anyway. I've decided I'm probably all in on TransArt now, mostly at least. So I tracked this down because I thought it looked really good and typical TransArt style that I've become accustomed to now, that we've all become accustomed to. I wanted to see what they would do with remaking what was still a very good toy that I enjoyed from back in the day. So inside the box we come with a typical plastic inlay, which if I take off the upper layer, well there's a few layers. I've taken off some of the accessories on the inside, but it houses some of the other faces. Also a cloth to cover the chrome chest. Again, no gloves. More accessories underneath, which also holds a flight stand, which I've removed, as well as a collector's card with stats on the back. And interesting, it's 10 for everything. It's a bit Thunderclash for you. Firepower, 10. Strength, 10. Speed, 10. Intelligence, 10. Doesn't leave much for the rest of us. Which, of course, it doesn't come with any instructions, but there is some QR codes on the side that you can scan that will presumably take you there, but it's written in a language that I don't understand. But I would guess this is one for a English and non-English version. That's fairly typical. But I will say, if you've owned the toy from before, shock horror, it transforms exactly the same, more or less. But that's enough monkey business. Let's have a look at the bot itself, shall we? And here he is in his robot mode, and that is a very nice monkey. He's very big, straight out of the box. He does come with a lot of presence to him, and he does have a lot of similarities straight away to the original toy. Now, if you've had the original Transmetal toy, I personally did, and some of those toys are still really fun to this day. They've got all of the characteristics to it. This is no exception. So I can see the argument that this is just a straight upscale of the original toy. To the face of it, even to some parts to the handle of it, it isn't a lot different. There's a lot of similarities, and you could argue, why improve on perfection? It is just a big scale, but it is quite a big scale. This is a chunky bot, particularly by Masterpiece size. He comes with a different face sculpt to one I've got put on at the moment, but I'll get into that in a minute. Changing the faces is challenging, to say the least. But I do like how he looks. The silver used is actually a very reflective silver. It's just a matte colouring of a paint, but it is a very nice one. The blue chrome that you see on the knee pads, and what will be more apparent in beast mode, is gorgeous to see that. It really is lovely. But yeah, that's how he looks. Now, I do understand there was some trouble with the ankles on first releases or earlier releases, but I've had some very mixed messages on this, or there's very limited messages to say that there actually was trouble. But I have heard potentially it wasn't as strong as it could be. There certainly is lacking die cast in this figure. He's very plastic. He almost feels quite hollow, quite shallow. There's a reason for that, for transformation as well, if you are familiar with that. But that's how he looks on the turntable. Let's get in for a closer look. So as you can see, if I get him into focus a bit, he's got a lovely display of paint on that chest. That is a lovely pearlescent use, and there is almost like a sparkliness to the purple. I don't know if you'll see that. Might have to see it more in photos, but there is a real reflectiveness on the brown or purple used on the shoulders. It's surprising how nice that looks. Goes all the way down to the crotch piece as well, but the silver is very reflective, as really silver should be. But it does look very nice. I love that head sculpt. That facial expressions really are this guy's bag. It looks so good. Articulation wise, pretty good. Heavy ratchets outward, maybe too heavy, but it is there to bore weight. You get bicep rotation, only a single bend on the elbow, and it's fine enough, but okay, maybe you get a bit more than 90 degrees, but I'd like a bit more out of that. Hand open with an index finger and thumb movement, if I can get the index finger moving. Wrist rotation, but again quite stiff. So I'd like to see a double elbow, but very heavy ratchets there. Waist rotation and the head rotation. You can look up a little bit, look down a fair bit actually, which is quite good for the size he is, and left and right respectively. But there is a very nice expression there. That's very cool. Legs, heavy ratchets outward, very nice. Smaller ratchets going outwards. Knee bend, not the best knee bend because of how it works. It's a very clanky knee joint for my money, but it's ratcheted, it's good enough. And ankles are on a ball joint. You actually get arguably more of a rotation out than in, but it's actually going to make up the skateboard when he's in his third beast mode, if you like, or his transmetal mode. But that's how he looks. Nice articulation, nice movement. Now what I did mention is that he felt a bit hollow. So there's a reason for that, because the transformation is just the same as the original toy, more or less. If I get this bit up, you pry the front and the back open so he can swap his head around. And the reason why he felt hollow is because he more or less is. And that almost bothers me. He doesn't have that typical masterpiece heft, which I would like. It's keeping very similar, very good homage to the original toy, but as such does not have the density that you would want for a masterpiece character, because it's keeping that original transformation in mind. And okay, it might be the only way you can flip a monkey into a robot, by having a hollow compartments to do it in. But when you pick it up, it just doesn't feel as inspiring. You're like, oh, this has got some heft to it. I do think the legs could do with some die cast added, with him being so top heavy. But I can't say I hate it. I certainly don't hate it. He's so big in presence. And I did really love the original toy, so naturally I love this as well. And there he is in his gunner mode, and really it's just the backpack brought forward, which he did use in the cartoon, and you can do it here. It's a bit clunky getting it in this position, and it's a nice gimmick in terms of the TV show and what he can do, and it's good that he can do it here, but it is a little bit gangly getting it into position. And also, this is where stability can be a bit of an issue, because with him now being a bit more front heavy in this position, if I tilt him forward ever so slightly, there he goes. And yeah, this is where I think the ankles really could do with some added die cast to it. But it's a nice enough feature. You just really have to pose him right. It's just the front and the back that won't hold quite as well. But it's a nice little feature that he can do, and of course he did do it in the show. So yeah, that's him in his gunner position. And we'll move on to accessories. Here he is holding his maces, which of course he can do and did do quite a bit in the original cartoon. The only thing is there isn't a groove for these to go into. There's no pegs, or at least not that I can see. And as such, drooping, it's very hard to get him to really bite into these. You can actually see around the thumbs. I've actually moved the thumbs out of the way just to get a bit of grip, but look how easy they can just come out. It's more or less just slotted in. That's a bit of a minus mark, I feel. Unless I'm doing something wrong, there's no groove, there's a peg on the palm of the hand which the gun will go into, but there's nothing on the base of these for them to peg into. So that feels like a bit of a minus. It wouldn't have been hard to put a protruding peg on here or a gap in here for a peg on the hand to go into. And he did use these quite a lot in the cartoon. He did use them as maces or, clubs, so they can be done. It should be done, really. That feels like a bit of a miss for me. Now, for an accessory that does work, here he is holding his traditional hand cannon. I always felt that looked quite stumpy in the original cartoon, but here he is, true to life, and this actually pegs in very nicely. So yeah, he holds it well, and he can go shooting around Predacons. But also, he comes with some bluish effects, which you can stack together, which you can then attach to the gun, which he then has some nice blast effects, but it doesn't stop there, because there's a little button on top of the gun. If you can actually see that, it lights up. And it probably won't do a lot of justice in a light box, but you can just about see inside the gun. There's a glow inside, so you can get some nice blast effect radiance on the go. But I like that. The peg on the hand is a little bit snug to get in, but it will hold. So yeah, if you're going to keep him in this mode, that's probably the gun you want to have him with. It's a shame he doesn't come with two of them. I couldn't remember if he came with two in the cartoon, or if he has, I've certainly misplaced one. But that's how he looks anyway. It's a nice little feature. I will just say as well, I can't see anywhere on here for weapon storage. It's a shame. It would be good if there was somewhere that he could plug it into his hip maybe. So this is just going to lie around if you're not going to use it. Now I did mention, of course, he comes with some alternative faces. So what he's got on at the moment is probably the most placid of the faces, but it's still quite smug, which I quite like. It's just enough to be serious, but a little bit sly as well. However, if this isn't sly enough for you, then perhaps this will have you covered. This is real Captain Simeon vibes. You have a very smug face, big smile either end, and a bit of a winking eye on the left on the go, maybe. So yeah, that could be a good one to use. But if you really want to get primitive, this is probably what you need. Here he is with a very toothy gorilla grin. This is angry war gorilla silverback territory, and that could be a good one to use. But again, getting these on is difficult. It's possibly easier on this mode than say the beast mode, because you're only doing the face rather than half the head, but it's still a little bit awkward, I've found, so you'll forgive me for not doing it quite this second. I will hope to get some photos up with some different faces. I will hope to get some photos up with some different facial expressions on the go, because there's a nice bit of character here. Okay, now on to comparisons. Here he is alongside TransArt's latest offering, Motor Spider, their version of a Transmetal Tarantulas. Probably about right in size, but it's lovely seeing these two together. TransArt really do presentations so well. Takara Beast Wars Tigatron, very nice, probably the right scale. Again, Tigatron did not turn into a Transmetal, so didn't get a chance really. So that's good to see them together. Transmetal 2 Cheetor. Now, of course, these two did not share the same screen, because by the time this Cheetor came around, Optimus was in his third body. I like the fact that even Rat Trap made a joke around how often Optimus changes his bodies in this series. But yeah, that's how they look together. Cheetor is quite tall in this stage, so yeah, he naturally dwarfs him. Takara Beast Wars Dinobot. And we're getting into the big boy stage now. This is getting into the right scale now. This is where Optimus was starting to get more eye level with Dinobot. And of course, this was really their goodbye at this point, which led up to the Code of Heroes speech that Optimus gives. So these two looking very good, different eras of Beast Wars, but they shared the screen in very much this guise, so it works quite well. And Takara Masterpiece Optimus Primal, the first incarnation. This is again probably right, because that first Primal was small. I always quite like that. The fact that Optimus gets bigger with each upgrade, but it's nice seeing these two together. This is kind of my OG Primal. This is what I kind of feel he always should be. As much as I like this design, that's the one where I look and go, oh yeah, that's Primal. That's a Transmetal, but that's Primal. It's good to see these two together. And this is a comparison we all want to see. Here he is alongside his nemesis in TransArt's version of Transmetal 1 Megatron. Really, when you put these two side by side, you realise how big that Megatron is. He really does dwarf him, but this Megatron was always big. Megatron in general was big compared. But getting these two together, man, they look so good. It's just kind of locked in that forever war that I love with these two characters. The nemesis to one another. So it's really good seeing these two together. And just for the scale of things, here he is alongside a Takara Masterpiece Hot Rodimus, just so you get an idea of how big we're talking here, of a typical Carbot scale. Okay, let's get this soldier transformed up into monkey mode, shall we? And here he is in his gorilla mode, and this is where this figure really has its selling point. It looks fantastic. It is so chromy, it is so gorgeous. And getting it in this kind of fist down pose really just works. As far as I'm concerned, it just works. The transformation is almost identical, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I certainly didn't need instructions for it. There was a couple of changes, and I'll show you when we get in for a closer look, but I do think they were maybe unnecessary, perhaps. Certainly one of them. But this really is this figure's selling point. The silver shines beautifully, but the blue absolutely comes to life. It's so reflective. And yeah, it's just, this is the selling point of this figure. It's not really to be surprised that TransArt do very lovely chrome, and this is a good 50% chrome, if not more. So this was always going to be the figure that stands out in the mode that stands out as well. Let's get in for a closer look. So if I bring him more towards the camera, I don't know if you'll be able to see the facial expression he's got on, but it is kind of a smirk. It's the one I've chosen to go with for now. Primal always had that kind of cheeky chappy characteristic. He had a leadership with a sense of humour, so I felt that worked quite well. I do like the head rotation up so he can get this pose, because he can look all the way down to stand up, but then to get a more prone on all fours, that's how high up he can look, and it kind of gives a bit more angles and posability. Now, as I say, the transformation is more or less the same, apart from two things. So when you fold his chest piece, or rather his back piece, to become the robot's chest piece, you have to rotate these things around about 90 degrees. And it's an unusual choice, but it's to make them sit more flush on the shoulders and then more flush around the hips. The only other thing is with the hands. The hands are actually interchangeable. They are not the same hands. They flip inside the wrist compartments and swap out. But the only thing that is to do is to get thumbs to pose the right way. Which I get, that's fine, but putting in effectively 4 hands, 1, 2, 3 and 4, would it not be better to have a thumb that can maybe swing around to the other side of the hand and rotate the thumb around? I don't know, that seemed a bit of a needless change of transformation I don't think the original one had, just to make it look more, yes, aesthetically pleasing and correct, but it seemed an odd choice just to get thumbs to point in the right direction. Now I will say as well, he can stand up, but these feet aren't very secure, so in very much so, that's it, and it will hold, but he's resting more on the back. You can use these metal supports, fan them down a little bit for a bit of back support, but they're on wheels, and by the time you get everything more or less in place, it will balance, but it's very precarious, and that's about as much of a standing pose as you'll get. But they're very loose, those front feet, so he'll easily topple forward. Not that you'll probably pose him like that, you could, but there he goes. It's not a lot to stop you, so that's something that I would like a bit more secure. Or if you're going to have it like that, just not in a mode or a position you would keep this mode in. Now I'll just quickly show you some of the other faces he comes with. He comes with 2 more, similar to robot mode. This is murder getting the faces on. You've got to clip them down, they don't completely align, and the top pegs just won't bite in, or you have to put an uncomfortable amount of force. So what he has there is a bit of a slightly smirk face, a bit happy-go-lucky. This isn't an awful lot different. If I try and get my thumb out of the way, it's more of a gentle smirk. There is definitely smirk there, pleased with himself, but that's more of a sly smirk, and this is more of a happier smirk, I suppose. There's not an awful lot in it, and similar to robot mode, he comes with a big toothy aggression one. I do like that one. Again, that would be quite good in silverback beating chest territory. I would like that, but yeah, that's how he looks. It's just these pegs around here. You can get these bottom pegs where my thumb is. You can get those pegged in, but then this peg at the top protrudes at the top of his head around here. And to clip it in, you put an uncomfortable amount of force, and when it does go in, it makes a very disconcerting crack. So it's asking for breakages. I'm not really prepared to push those in. I'm quite happy to keep them in that mode. It's fine. And I'm not really looking at his face, it's really the body here that is the shining example here. It looks good. I do like the other faces, I just don't think I'm going to use them all that often because how uncomfortable it is getting them on. Okay, on to some other comparisons. Here he is alongside TransArt's version of a Transmetal Rat Trap. Again, loving these two. The chrome really works. I think both these beast modes are fantastic. That's why I keep Rat Trap in this mode. It looks fantastic, so yeah, really pleased how these two come together. Standard comparison we do. Here he is alongside typical Masterpiece Cardbot Sunstreaker, so you get an idea of size. Might as well get another comparison in. Here he is alongside Metagate's version of a Beast Wars Pterosaur. Now, of course, these two did not share the same screen at this particular style because Pterosaur kind of fell into a hot pool of molten lava. So yeah, that will probably kill you. So it's a shame that these two didn't really get a share of screen together, but as he's here in beast mode, I thought I'd show you. How could we forget Covert Agent Ravage? And different scale ranges, of course. This is the legacy version of a Transmetal 2 Megatron in dragon form alongside the TransArt in a Masterpiece scale. Okay, they didn't really share the screen in this mode. They were on to Optimal Optimus by this point, but this is how they look together. There's more beast features. The scale actually isn't that far off here, so that actually works all right. The Masterpiece offering of this guy is just ginormous. Don't know where I'd put that. And this is a comparison I just love. This is him alongside TransArt's version of Megatron in his beast mode. And honestly, I can't tell you. The camera does make it look good, but in hand, they look so good. again, these two just kind of locked in a forever war, and you get these two side by side. They resonate. That chrome, that bronze, the purple, the blue, the silver. That's perfect. That is the perfect face-off when you see these two together. A bit like when I have the Legacy Armada Optimus Prime against the Fans Hobby Armada Megatron. Two completely different scale ranges, two completely different companies. That works really well. This is the same company, but it has that level of compatibility. Having these two side by side, I just absolutely love that. That sold it to me. And here he is alongside Takara's version of Optimus Primal in traditional beast mode. Now, I've transformed him in a bit of a hurry, so I'm sure I haven't got everything right, but you can really see the size difference here. I'm sure his knee pads are supposed to go down, but I cannot remember how to do it. So yeah, that's how he looks. There is quite stark differences, but yeah, keeping the same gorilla theme. That's how they look together. And there he is in his Transmetal third mode, which is a flying skateboard, which I always felt that was silly even back then. I mean, some really are all silly in one form or another. Who put skateboards on a T-Rex? So why wouldn't a gorilla have a skateboard that flies? It works, but the only thing I'd say is it doesn't connect very well at the base. At least I haven't worked it out to. You can see they aren't flush, these two metal rods, either side of the legs that join it together. As these are probably some of the sturdiest parts on his body and everything else is plastic, I don't really want to squeeze these in to try and get these flush. Maybe that is as far as they go, but I certainly don't want to push it any further. And of course, as you have probably seen, oh, typical. Now he stands. Well, fine. He wouldn't stand many, many times. And now I've just put him down one time and he stands up. He generally won't stand. He'll topple one way or the other. But don't worry, TransArt's got you covered with this flight stand, which is a little bit of a pain to put in place, let me tell you. To actually plug it in, it's quite stiff. And even still, when you get him plugged into it, plug in straight to his backside, and that's how he looks. And the fact that you can see him wobbling around tells you that whilst it's secure and the peg's deep enough, it's still a bit disconcerting about how floppy it is, because I've had to counterweight it so far over. So I wasn't overly impressed with that, because I felt it could have been stronger, it could have been better. There's a few too many gaps in the ridge here of the arm that makes me think that could have been solid, and I would have liked it to have been translucent. It does come with a more of an extendable version, but if anything, that's floppier because it's longer and hasn't got much more tolerance to it. So that's what you can have to have him flying in this mode, and he could hold his clubs. Well, he can't hold the clubs, but he could if you don't mind balancing him. But that's how he looks in his flying mode. It's a nice feature to actually get use out of the mode. You could have him flying with Cheetor alongside if you've got the Transmetal 1 copy, but you can see how much I've got to counterweight it just to get him to hold a position. But whilst he's flopping a little bit, he isn't going to fall. And of course, I forgot to show you that also in the box, whilst it didn't come with a pair of gloves, it did come with a nice TransArt cloth, which also has QR codes to the instructions. So we've gone from gloves to cloths to, I don't know, but it kept the chrome nice and covered. Another nice feature. I mean, I'll defend Beast Wars to the high hill, but this is just silly. So what are my views on Monkey Boy Pro Skater 2? Well, I like it. I do like it. It is very resemblant of the original toy. Is this just a straight upscale with modern day engineering? Probably, yeah. Does it do some things better? Yes, it definitely does. The size alone is impressive. It's a surprisingly big bot, particularly if you put him alongside the Takara Optimus Primal, the first Beast Wars Primal. He dwarfs him, which I guess is right, but Primal was never the biggest bot in any form until you get to Optimal Optimus stage. Taking it out the box, the size really does impress you. That chest to wide shoulder stance, it's like, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty much of a structure to stand toe-to-toe against Megatron. He's very light. There's hardly any die cast in this. The chrome is there, but it's a very plastic fill filler, and even the arms feel hollow. Well, I suppose they would always be rather than solid, but it's quite noticeable. It doesn't have that denseness, that heft that you'd otherwise expect. Now, I have heard on original releases that there was some trouble with ankle supports and them not being strong enough. I don't know if there was breaking. I haven't seen too much of this, but I have seen a line here or there. If there was to be any die cast in this figure, that's where I'd want it to be. I'd want it to be around the legs, as the legs are the most slender part of this body. He's all upper body. He's skipped leg day massively, many times over. So I'd love to see some die cast supports going through like the center of the leg down towards the ankle. This is just a ball joint to a flat panel shoe. And it's a lot of bot, even though it's not made of die cast. It's a lot to support on what could be sturdier legs. I find getting him into a pose, he has a tendency to flop backward and forward because he's so top heavy. And just to give you a more up-to-date example, yes, I know their Tarantulas was much more recently released, and so advancements have been made, but the die cast is all here. This is heavy die cast and then painted chrome on some very secure ball joints for the ankles. So posability, standing, even with all of that on the back, is not a problem. Can't quite say the same for this. I would like that same treatment applied. And these are die cast, but it's just doesn't feel as enough, and the legs certainly are just plastic. So that's something I would have liked to have seen more of. The facial features are quite a selling point for me with this. The fact that you can get such expression on really bot mode and beast mode to have a very characteristic looking Prime. He hasn't got a faceplate to cover the face, so he can get some good expressions on the go. Some quite sarcastic, dry humour sessions I really like. But applying them and getting them on and off is a bit of a ball ache. It's very hard work to prime on and off. I do think that's a problem with faceplates and third party in general. When you get these other faceplates to have different expressions, a shouty face, a happy face, a sarcastic face, what have you, how you apply the face and how you interchange the heads can really make or break whether you use them or not. So I find some of them are just a little peg. You just take them off and put a new one on. Great, you've got a different expression. Some want you to rip off an entire head and put on a whole new head. Some want you to unscrew the head. And in his case, you've got a very tough clip that you almost have to use tools on, but you want to be very careful doing that because you will scratch the bodywork or the paintwork. And it's an annoyance because then when it becomes so difficult to use these interchangeable faces, you don't want to do it. You don't want to risk damaging, and with this guy as well, it makes some very disconcerting noises. You're putting in a lot of pressure behind it. The chrome is gorgeous as we'd expect. The beast mode is probably the selling point for me in this one. I love how it looks. It's got much more presence than the original toy did. It has much more character. This is one thing I'll say about this. It comes across in character from facial expressions, hulking presence. So when he's in beast mode, is it any wonder that that shines through? When you get them together, it does look really good. This TransArt line that they're doing for Beast Wars, the Transmetals are really coming together as a nice army and as a nice squad. So he is big. I do think there is lacking for modern day advancements. I didn't have to look up the instructions. He is just the same. So I don't know, could you really improve on perfection? I've said before, the original Transmetal toys were some of the best Transformer toys ever made. Some still hold up today. So did it need to change, and did they want to keep a homage to the original? Maybe, and that's fine. Is somewhat uninspiring because of that, because it's no different, but it has got its plus points. The flight stand I am not keen on. I am not a fan of it, really. It's a nice idea to include, but I feel it looks a bit janky, a bit unsightly, and when you put him on there, he has a tendency to lean. I haven't got the balancing of it right yet. Maybe it's something I need to work on a bit more, and I'd like to display him in this mode when he's flying on his skateboard, ready for just for space in my collection. So putting him on that, whilst it's a nice feature, I think all flight stands from all companies should be translucent anyway, and they certainly should be able to take a weight of a figure comfortably, particularly one that isn't filled with die-cast, without any droopage. I do like it. I do like what TransArt has done. I am willing to admit this is an older figure with slightly older engineering. I'm glad I've got it nevertheless. Based on this, I give this figure 3.5 for the star badges out of 5. It is a recommend for me, particularly if you are in for this line. It's probably a bit of a harder one to find now because it's older, and they're certainly not going to go into any reissues just yet. They want to finish off their line. But backtracking and seeing the advancements made, as I say, from Prime to a more recently released Tarantulas or even their Megatron, you're seeing good advancements being made and how they have learned. But it does have its characteristics that TransArt are putting in, such as the build quality, such as the paint, such as the chrome. It is still a very lovely figure. And there we go. That is my review of TransArt's BWM-02 Skateboard Gorilla, their version of a Transmetal Optimus Primal. I'll stick some photos up at the end. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you on the next one.